Hello everybody and welcome back. This is Mr. Morehouse, your computer science teacher, and today we're going to be talking about program layout. I'll start off with explaining what program layout is, and then we'll go through an example. You'll want to follow along with the example and pay close attention as you will use that program to create your assignment that you'll be turning in at the end of this lesson. So here we go. Program layout, what is it? Well, program layout is basically the guidelines that you want to follow to structure the code of your computer program. So one, it's easy to read, and two, it follows a logical sequence. It's pretty simple really once you get the hang of it, so we'll be going pretty fast. If at any time you need to jot down some notes, it's always a great technique to pause the video, jot a couple notes down, or rewind to review something that you don't quite understand. So here we go. Program layout. You've seen a program layout similar to this in the last video discussing variables. You'll notice here that we've got the public class at the top with end class at the bottom. Now, then inside of it you have the area called the private sub with the corresponding end sub. So that should look familiar. Let me take a little bit of time and explain what these are. First of all, the public class and end class lines are the beginning and end of your program. You cannot type anything above the public class line or below the end class line without causing your computer to freak out when you try to run the program. Also, you can't modify these lines at all. You'll notice in a computer program that in Visual Basic, that you can type on them or you can delete them. You'll just run into a number of different types of errors. So in fact, one thing that I usually do is when I see that a program won't even start, I look at the code and I start by looking to see if the first and last lines, public class form 1 and end class, are still there. Alright, so that's the beginning and the end of your program. Everything has a beginning and an end, just like a book, an essay, life, and here it is in code. Next we have the actual procedure. So your procedure is a set of instructions that starts with private sub and ends with end sub. And everything in between these two is code that will execute when a specific event happens. Now, programs are typically event driven. That's the term that's used to describe them. That means that the computer won't just randomly do something. It needs some event to prompt it to do something, because computers just aren't that smart. So we need to tell them when they need to do something. For instance, this is a click event for a button named BTN submit. What that means is that there's some button on a form, it's called BTN submit, and when you click it, all the code here gets executed. So kind of makes sense, right? Pretty much your code, all the code goes in between private sub and end sub. Those two lines of code are automatically generated when you double click on something on your form. There's other ways to create them. You could type them out manually, or you could click on some other things to create them, and I'll actually show you what that looks like in the demonstration later on in this video. Now, one other thing that we should point out here, of course, is that you of course notice that this procedure has two variables, one called strname, which is a string variable, and one called intAge, which is an integer. And you'll notice that variables are declared up front. So the variables will be put right after your private subline. You'll declare all your variables there, and then after you're done declaring your variables, then you'll start actually using them in your code, which goes below that. Now, this is true about 99% of the time. There are a few unique cases we'll come across where we declare variables in the midst of our code, but those are the exceptions, and so we won't talk about them here. Now, let's move on to a program that has multiple events with code inside them. For instance, if you look here, what you see is that first we have a procedure for our private sub for a click event for something called btn submit, for a button named btn submit. Now, what we see right below it is we see a second procedure for a click event on another button. You'll see that this one is named btn alternate. Once again, it's the click event for it. And you'll see that both of these procedures have a beginning and an end. They're both contained within the public class end class lines. And you see that within them, they declare their variables that they're going to use. And underneath the variables, you see where the code goes. So pretty basic concepts here. If you need to, you might want to jot this down, just keep it in mind, but I suspect that it will just become really easy and obvious to you as time goes on. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to how we'd use these in code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to transition to Visual Studio, and I'm going to give you a second to pull it up, and what you're going to want to do is create a new project, and I've named my project Hello World. You can see right there, Hello World, all one word, no spaces. And what I've done is I've created a form for it. Now I'm going to explain this form to you and give you a chance to reproduce it yourself.